Hey.
Hi. So everybody's in right now and can hear us, just a FYI.
Hi, everybody. We're getting a behind the scenes look at setting up a Zoom webinar.
Basically, yeah.
Okay.
It's about 5 minutes. So I'm just putting the link to YouTube right now.
All right. I say it says live on YouTube, so that looks good.
Yep. I'm just updating our website. So.
Okay. So we got a Q&A going. We got chat. So Heather, am I going to be able to assign people to talk if they raise their hand? Because I am, what am I? I'm the co-presenter.
Yep, I'm going to make you co-host right now. So if it logs you out, log back in again.
Okay, do it. No, I'm still alive. Cool.
Okay, that's good.
Right.
So to actually get everybody going, if you guys want to just hang out for a few minutes, or if you want to let us know actually where you're viewing this from, that would be great in the chat feature. Make sure you do all panelists and attendees on that little drop-down menu so everybody can see everybody else. Awesome.
Wow, check it out. Texas Tech. Nice. San Diego. Emily Holmes, I know you. Amanda. Goodhart Parks, I know you too.
Are you all zen now, Dan?
Me, I'm getting there.
Well, we're up to 73 so far, so.
Cool.
Well, for you guys that haven't actually or just signed on, if you guys just want to let us know where you're viewing this from, that would be great in the chat. Make sure that you do all panelists and attendees so everybody can see. That'd be great. Thanks.
So, shall we get going, or another minute? We're about up to our full capacity, a full room, as it were. So, I'll start. Welcome, everybody. So pleased to have you here with us. Started out the idea being a very informal sort of a thing. It's turned into a little bit more of a a widespread phenomenon here, but I thought that this would be really an excellent opportunity for us to gather as a museum field to take a little bit of a break. It's been such obviously a crazy couple of weeks, and we've all been very stressed out and the like, I'm sure, over the course of time. And the thing, if any of you guys that know me knows very much that I favor having a good balance between pushing yourself to the limit and then also giving yourself a little bit of a break. And so that's what this session is designed to do. We've got folks coming in from all over the country, thanks to my colleagues in some of the other regional associations that have kind of pushed this out. So I appreciate that, and welcome everybody from outside of New England. Hopefully it's warmer where you are than it is here, but that's to be expected. But we welcome everybody, and we're also anybody that did not get into the room to participate directly. We're live streaming this on YouTube as well, so that'll be a bit of an experiment. So welcome to everybody out there on YouTube. I'm sorry you can't necessarily interact with us with some of the things, but hopefully you'll be with us in spirit as well over the next hour or so. A couple of housekeeping things. We're, like everybody else in this world, learning how to use Zoom in many different ways. I've been doing a million kinds of Zoom meetings, which I've kind of gotten okay at that. Haven't done too many webinars, so we're going to be working out some of the details here as we go, so bear with me. One of the things that I want to do, our agenda for the day, I guess I should start. I'm going to do just a little bit of an intro to where we are. Then we're going to do a little bit of a guided meditation for about 10 minutes or so. And then I'm going to just sort of do a little riff and some thoughts about where we are as a field and so on and so forth. And then we'll open it up to Q&A so you guys can participate. And we can do that a couple of different ways. One is there is a Q&A box down in your toolbar down at the bottom of the screen. So if you have an actual question that you'd like me to ponder and see if I can answer it, or if somebody else can help answer it, we'll do that. And so that's the way to ask questions. The other thing is you have a little marker to raise your hand, and I can see that in the participant list if you're raising your hand. And that's if you want to actually, I think I can bring you on via video or audio or whatever to sort of interact, and we can have a chat while we go. So we'll give that a try too. This is like the full Zoom treatment. So hopefully one of those options will work. And of course, you can always use the chat to just sort of talk a little bit about what's going on in your head, and we can try to keep track of that as well. Heather's going to hang in there with me, I think, right, to sort of track some of this stuff as we go forward. And we'll take it from there. So let's see, that's so I wanted to start out with a poll. Now let's see, a couple of polls. I'm going to allow panelists to vote. First thing I wanted to know is your state of mind right now. And the question that I've got is, right now, I am worried and anxious, but dealing with it. Hakuna Matata, no worries whatsoever, or totally freaking out. So kind of the middle ground, no worries whatsoever, and then total freak out stage. So see how many folks are voting here and what your state of mind is. Got a couple of people freaking out. Most people looking like they're worried and anxious, but dealing with it. So, all right, so I'm gonna end the polling. Thanks for doing that. And I'm gonna share the results. And hopefully you can all see that. So 89% of us are worried and anxious, but we're dealing with it. That's cool. 8% of us, no worries whatsoever. I like you people. And then 3% totally freaking out. I like you people too. You're very honest. I should do like who's actually being honest with this too, because all of us are kind of freaking out in one form or another, I think. So, all right, so that's that one. And we're gonna see relaunch polling. Nope, I'm gonna cancel that. I got another poll and we'll see if this one works too. Right, attendees are now viewing. Stop sharing results. Okay, now I think I got, oh, here we go. Number 2, current concerns. Right now, I'm most concerned about health issues, mine and others, the economy, namely, will I have a job? What will happen to museums? All of the above or none of the above. So I'm most concerned. What am I most concerned about? Okay, cool. So it looks like everybody's got sort of the general concern and worry about all of the above. I'm sure there are other issues too that we're worried about. 58% all of the above, 20% the economy, and 15% health issues. And 1% said none of the above, and 5% said what will happen to museums as sort of my chief worry. So oops, I'm going to share the results, see if you can see that. So there we are. Yeah, the upshot with all of this is that, just acknowledging that we've got a lot of concerns and worries and so forth. And I guess I would invite you then to spend the next, hour or so, whatever is left of the hour, to consider this kind of a vacation from those worries. You know, what's so interesting is that, here we are in our houses, and you can kind of look at it from a couple of different ways. Some people this is already week 2 for most people doing this kind of thing. And there are some people that are already referring to this as sort of, house arrest and, solitary confinement and those types of things. And that's, totally valid, because you can be climbing the walls depending on your situation. And a lot of times people are thinking to themselves, oh my God, I need a vacation. I need a vacation for this. And then we can't go on a vacation. There's nothing to do. And I think this is, it's definitely the first time in my life, but I would imagine in most of our lives, to, confront this reality of we want to do something, and yet there's nothing we can actually do. And that's just so crazy. And especially this idea, like, a lot of times when we are stressed out, we do something to relieve the stress. We go on vacation, or at the very least we go out to a spa, or we do something that actually relieves the stress, and we can't do that. So the one thing about meditation and mindfulness is that, in a sense, you can do that, because you can sort of use this as a way to go on vacation, so to speak. And so for the next couple of minutes, consider this to be a vacation from your thoughts, a vacation from your anxieties and your worries and so forth. And it's a way to, sort of get in touch with yourself in a way that takes you out of the anxieties and worries. It's a hiatus from those. So let's do a little meditation. I don't know how many of you have meditated before in the past. I should have asked that as a poll question, but I didn't. My own story is I've been meditating, had a regular meditation practice for about 15 years or so. And it started out as something that was basically, a means to control stress, get myself centered for the day, that kind of a thing. And over the course of time, it's developed though into a regular practice. It's really changed the way I look at reality, the way I approach my work, the way I approach my relationships with other people, and those types of things. So whether you're an expert meditator or just beginning, I'd invite you to let's join together and just sort of get ourselves centered, get ourselves seated for a few minutes. We'll do this for about 10 minutes or so. And I'd invite you to first, get probably sitting, but you can, be standing or laying down or something like that. But find a very comfortable position. Ideally, you'll be sort of squared away. You'll be seated in your chair or on a cushion or whatever, and you'll get your back straight. You'll have your shoulders relaxed, hands on your knees, perhaps, or I always put them, you can't see me, but, sort of dropped in between my legs like this, just kind of relaxed, and sit up straight, and take a couple of deep breaths and let them out one at a time. And just to sort of get relaxed and get into the mood. You can close your eyes if you like. Stay with me and close your eyes. And focus first on just becoming aware of your body. Focus yourself on the feeling of you and your posture in your chair or on your back or wherever it is. You feel the contact points of your feet and your rear end and perhaps your back if it's touching the back of the chair. Just become aware of that. Become aware of your body. Center in a little bit as you're feeling your body onto understanding the sounds that are happening right now. Become aware of those sounds. Perhaps you've got the window open, you can hear some birds or the traffic or something along those lines. Just listen to the sounds. Don't register them as distractions. Just sort of listen in sort of fresh awareness. As you relax into awareness of your body and awareness of the sounds, think of these things not as objects, so to speak, not the bird per se, but just a sound, and let it all kind of happen. Grab the awareness of what's happening, and you might even ask yourself, what is this? Not to examine it per se, but just to open yourself to being aware. So as you feel your awareness of your body and of the sounds around you and your awareness of your surroundings, now take a little bit more of a focused look at your breath. This is the traditional anchor for meditation. Taking a look at your breath. Just become aware of your breath. We breathe, it's said, something like 23,000 times per day. You can ask yourself, how many of those breaths are you actually aware of at any given time? We'll use this brief moment to become aware of a few of those breaths. So you breathe in and you breathe out very naturally. Don't need to take deep breaths. Just be aware of your breath as it is. You might become aware of the breath going in to your body. You can feel the coolness of it, perhaps, as you inhale, as it goes across your upper lip. And you can feel the warmth of it as it's coming out. As you're exhaling, you feel the warmth of your own body and your energy coming out. So become aware of your breathing. You might want to, as you become more aware of your breathing in and out, exhaling, do a little mantra that focuses you on the present moment. And the mantra is a very simple one. As you inhale, just think the word just. And as you exhale, think the word this. So it becomes with each in and out breath, just this, just this. And you find yourself sinking into the present moment. Just this. You can become aware of your breathing and your body, where it is in your place. And you can also become aware at the same time that you are, in fact, connected with all of the rest of us around the United States right now. Each of us sitting in our own respective places, doing exactly the same thing right now in this moment, breathing together. Just this. We're connected. We're all breathing together. As you bring awareness to all of these things, you might have some thoughts that enter your mind. Those thoughts are natural. You might have emotions and anxieties. Those things are natural too. They come up. It's really hard to calm the mind some days, especially when we're particularly under stress and a lot of emotion, a lot of emotional engagement. Give yourself a little break. Just say, these thoughts are coming up. These emotions are coming up, and that's okay. You allow yourself to have those emotions, whatever they are, those thoughts, whatever they are. If you just sort of watch them, thinking of them as little clouds or mist or whatever, and they go away, you can let go. You can let go of the thoughts and the emotions, and that's the beauty of meditation. Bringing your awareness to all of that stuff, where you are, what you're thinking about, what you feel. As you bring your awareness to your body and your posture and the sounds, the present moment of your breathing, your sharing of your connection to all of these other terrific museum people around the United States that are sharing this moment with you, with me. I'd like you also to bring your awareness to a couple of basic facts that you may not often acknowledge about yourself. And I want you to think these words with me and internalize them very carefully. And the words are, I am whole, I am complete, and I am enough. Think about those words very carefully and try to own them. Try to see yourself in those words. I am whole. I am complete. I am enough. You do not have to do anything in order to merit being whole or complete or enough. That's the way you are. And as we come out of this period of meditation, I want you to also think a little bit about gratitude as you are emerging back into your chair and your place here, coming out of this brief period of meditation. Think about the things that you are in fact grateful for. It's so easy for us to think of those things that we're lacking right now, whether it's the perceived lack of freedom or vacation or whatever we're lacking. But what can we be grateful for? At the very least, we can be grateful for each of those breaths. Our entire life hangs on each breath. So we become grateful for that. Even though things look very confused and bleak and dangerous to us right now, we can have some gratitude for our spaces where we are right now. We can be grateful for being able to have enough health to be able to breathe together. Be grateful for our colleagues, our friends, our museum field, which is such an incredible calling for most of us. Be grateful to be part of that. Think of that gratitude, your loved ones, your friends. So now I invite you to open your eyes and relax. Let yourself re-enter the space where we are. Here we are. Hi, everybody. Hope that made you feel good. It made me feel good. So as I said, I'm gonna riff for a couple of minutes on a few things and see where it goes. I don't know, and then we'll have some opportunity to do a little Q&A, a little interaction, see where we are with our feelings, emotions, and so on and so forth. I guess, I kind of wanted to think a little bit about the trajectory of the last couple of weeks, which has been so intense in so many ways, because it's been one of those sudden, shocking experiences that honestly, I'm imagining for most of us, it was like out of the blue. You know, museum people often do a lot of disaster planning, emergency preparedness, and so forth. We have to with our institutions and the collections that we have and the like. And yet, I think that only the most devoted disaster junkie ever even remotely considered some of the cataclysmic impact of what's happened over the last the last couple of weeks, and it has a profound impact on us. Certainly those of us who are leaders of institutions right now are facing all sorts of um, decisions, fact finding, needing to understand what the situation is in order to do our best to lead our institutions through what's happening. But the fact of the matter is that every single person that's involved in an institution or around an institution or connected with museums or whatever is part of this incredible moment, because in some ways not in some ways, we are all stakeholders in it. We are all very, very committed to the success of our field and the like. And the more committed and concerned we are, very often, the more we feel that anxiety and stress, because we do not want to lose it, what we've had. We don't want to have things change. We don't want to foresee a future without museums. We don't want to foresee us personally not having jobs. What are we going to do? So on and so forth. And I think that that's an important aspect of all of this, is to just simply acknowledge the shock and awe, as it were, of all of this, because we're just sort of waking up to this. And in so many ways, understanding that this is such a different moment for us, and it almost feels unfair in some ways, because we've told ourselves for many, many years that one of the values of museums is, in fact, that in times of social trouble, in times of periods of instability, like after 9/11, or in our region up here, the Boston Marathon bombing and all those types of things, museums act as a place for solace and a place where people go to recenter themselves and whatever. And we find meaning as museum professionals in that, to be able to, to play that role, that helping role. We found that was very, inspiring for all of us. And here we are now with social distancing, not able to do that. We are not able to function in that role. And we're trying to find our way through Zoom and online technologies and whatever. We're trying to make it up as we go along. How do we retain our value to our public? And all of these things are exceedingly difficult for us to get our hands around. And one of the things that I would point out to us is that just the simple fact of acknowledging that this is in fact what's happening is a big step in the right direction, because a lot of times the pain that comes with trauma like this is very frequently the pain that's caused by rebelling against reality, the pain that comes with not accepting the way things are. We have this sort of, we kid ourselves, or we delude ourselves into thinking things like, well, this shouldn't be the way it is, or I'm just so upset with the way things are, and those kinds of things. And that really causes that inner turmoil, because what that's doing is we're just saying, nope, I'm not going to accept the way things are. Just not going to do it. It's not right, not fair, not right, so forth. So I'm going to rebel against it. And we find that then that creates so much more angst in us, so much more anxiety. And in some ways, we're just not able to deal with the situation then as well as we possibly can, because at that point, you start realizing that your reactions are rooted in fear. They're rooted in the anxiety. You're allowing your emotions and your thoughts and so forth to actually govern your behavior, as opposed to you being able to govern them from the standpoint of being somewhat at ease with them. Doesn't mean you have to agree that these things shouldn't be different. And it doesn't mean that you can't have compassion for the people that are most affected, so forth. You can care very deeply. It's just that you don't carry around the extra baggage, the bag of rocks, I call it, carrying around this extra weight of just, I hate this. This is not good. You feel as though you have a loss of control and so forth. And, those are all the things that add up to it. So, you have to acknowledge it. You just have to simply accept it. You have to simply say, okay, this is the way things are. And now I will be able to figure out what needs to happen next. So that's part of it. I mean, I know in one of my own case, One of my biggest worries and concerns, because I, deal with a lot of different museums and a lot of different museum people, and I care very deeply about the museum field, and with it, all of you, as my pals in the South say, all y'all, right? Um, and so trying to imagine what the end game is going to be is really tough for me. I have to admit it. I have an interesting little anecdote for you. It was only a couple weeks ago, and that's what kind of blows my mind. That I was in Washington D.C. for Museums Advocacy Day, and I'm sure a bunch of you were there as well for DC Advocacy Day. And the day before we go on the Hill to advocate for museums, we have a training, and we hear from folks from the like the chairman of the National Endowment for the Humanities, and people from NEA and from IMLS and so forth. And not a single person, of course, was talking about this at that particular time. And it was just all old home week. We, those of us who have done it before, we see people from around the country, and we had a lot of handshakes and, hugs if you know people and so forth. And it was just, one of those really joyous moments. The day after Advocacy Day, I had some other meetings in DC, and I was walking along the street to my next engagement, and I was waiting at a traffic light to cross the street, and I looked over, and there was a chap next to me that looked very familiar. And I was like, quickly, who is that? Who is that? Where have I seen this person before? And then the light clicked in my head, and I looked over, and I said, "Good morning, Mr. Ambassador." And I ungloved my hand because it was cold out. I took my glove off, and I held out my hand. And I recognized him, and he said he took his glove off too and held his hand out. And he said, "Well, good morning, Bill Taylor." It was Ambassador Bill Taylor, William Taylor, who was the former ambassador to the Ukraine, the person that we all saw, if you're into politics, on the impeachment hearing fame. And it was just a remarkable experience because, it was just completely unexpected. And, we shook hands, and we ended up walking about 6 blocks and talking like old friends about, our kids and work and so forth. I told him how I was very appreciative of him bringing some humanity into the craziness and so forth. And then, we went our separate ways, shook hands again, and off we go. And it was such an incredible experience to me, just that feeling of closeness and, with a person that was, famous or whatever that you'd seen on TV. But we actually shook hands, and that was the deal. You actually had a physical contact with that person. And I reflected on that at the time, like how crazy it was. But I reflected on it since then. And this is what my sort of worry for the field and for everyone, is that this moment in time is going to change the way we actually interact with each other. What's the future of the handshake? What's the future of actually being with people? Are we going to trust people again, to be willing to be open to them, literally and physically, being part of their orbits in that way? Because as much fun as this is, being able to connect with people, over the over the internet, it's still a distance. So that's my concern as well. Last bit of a riff. I'm going to read you a poem that I think is like super cool. It's one of my favorite ones, and then we'll get to some questions. It's called "Wild Geese" by a person named Mary Oliver. Do this old school. Mary Oliver Devotions is the name of the book, and it's called "Wild Geese." And she says, Mary, "You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains, and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. Mary Oliver, Wild Geese. What I love about this, as much as anything, there are many things that are very tasty in here. But the one thing in particular that I was thinking of for this moment was this word that she repeats several times, and that is meanwhile, which I find fascinating because the idea is tell me about despair, yours, and I'll tell you mine. We're in despair right now. But always remember, meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, something else is happening out there in nature, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain, the wild geese high in the air. Those of us who have pets at home, I have a dog, Finny, over there somewhere. I'm sure you all have pets. And how many of us have actually, over the last week or so, been sitting there and thinking, this animal has no clue what's going on. You know, they're just living their lives. They're still doing their thing. They depend on us and so forth. But, you know, that meanwhile, something else is going on besides what's going on in our heads, the fears, the anxieties. Meanwhile, beyond what's happening in our society and so forth, there's something else that's going on. And there's a lot of comfort in that. You know, the idea that, you know, it's not all bad news. It's not all, you know, like it's all going to go, you know, lead to a terrible conclusion necessarily. I mean, Finny, my dog, and your dogs and cats and whatever, they're not particularly picking up on the big thing. They're probably sensing some stress and anxiety in your own household, but they're not too concerned about COVID-19, and they're not too concerned about economic crashes and whatever. They're more concerned about getting their dinner. And I guess maybe that's the way, you know, we should be thinking. So when we get freaked out about this, when we're worrying about where this is all going to lead, I think that word meanwhile is something that we should probably keep in mind over the course of time. All right, so let's do some Q&A here and see what's going on, all right? And here's somebody that has asked, do you recommend limiting the amount of time we allow ourselves to see this pandemic in the news? Oh, man. Yeah, I think that, you know, one of the big rules of self-care is being really aware of when we're feeling not so great based on a particular input. And, you know, we are all, of course, desperate for information. We all want to know what's happening. But there comes a point where we know what's happening, or we have the rough contours of what's happening, and now we're in it, we're down that proverbial rabbit hole. And you are then becoming more saturated and immersed in it. And you really do have to have a sense of, whoa, I am not feeling very good about this. I am realizing that I've just been on MSNBC or Fox News or whatever for the last 2.5 hours. And it's just like I've been in this trance and I'm feeling worse and worse and worse. And I think that it's a trick. I mean, that's part of mindfulness, is being able to, you know, recognize that. If you are not able to recognize that, if you're not able to sufficiently say, whoa, you know, have that feedback loop going where I've hit my limit, you need to do something like perhaps set a timer, or to, you know, have some method or means to say, whoa, I'm not going to do this any longer. You know, of course, you know, strategies are individual strategies. What works and what doesn't, you know, it depends. I mean, you know, you might do this during the day. Some people allot themselves twice a day to handle email, beginning and end, or something like that. That can work. I tend to check it throughout, but I tend also to prioritize and try not to get myself too far into a hole without being able to pull myself out. anybody wants to actually share the mic with me, why don't you raise your hand? And I think we can probably see whoever wants to do that in the, well, somewhere. I think I can probably do it if you want to do that, because I'm getting tired of hearing myself talk. But okay, what is your self-care rule number one that could be used in this situation? Self-care rule number one. Well, it might be what I just said. I think that the prevalence of inputs is can be overwhelming, and we get very seduced by this. And so, really, I think focusing and being mindful of what it is, the inputs that you're allowing in here, that is going to be very, very important, I think, for you to, that's kind of a baseline almost. I mean, that's more important than, starting or continuing a meditation practice. It's more important than anything, because, that's a moment to moment thing, and it really does shape your day. So I think really limiting, in my opinion, limiting the the amount and the duration of input, being able to say, I do not need to know this particular, overarching news on the pandemic and whatever, because you find yourself getting into that, anxiety feedback loop. Here's a question. Do you have any tips for self-guided meditation? How to start? Yeah, of course. Go to the internet. Seriously, there are a whole bunch of apps these days. I'm sure many of us have them, that you can use. Some are a little bit more useful than others, in my opinion. Some actually, charge a lot of money. They, get you going for free, and then end up charging you $70 a year or something like that. I tend not to do that. There are plenty of free ones out there. One really good one that is free, I think, is from Plum Village, which is the retreat center that is associated with a Vietnamese Zen master named Thich Nhat Hanh. Plum Village is in France. But look up Plum Village, and they've got a really excellent one that's got a variety of meditations that you can be using to sort of help that. And you said self-guided. I'm assuming that that means you just want to have some sort of basic help with some guided meditations. There are other things that you can do. I mean, I have an app that I use. It's a meditation timer. So I just meditate on my own in my own practice. But a timer is very useful, so that you are, especially on weekdays, when you've got to start work at a certain time, and you can use that, and it allots you a certain amount of time. So look into that. And then a lot of meditation books, or like, that's a rabbit hole in and of itself. Is like, okay, meditation. It's all over the place. It's kind of, what works for you, and experiment, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, and we actually had someone through the chat suggest Headspace for guided meditation.
Yeah.
She accesses it through Alexa, and her kids enjoy it too.
Yeah, there you go. Well, and that's actually a great point, because, you're home with your kids right now. What do you do? And it's really interesting. My kids are grown. They're not here these days, and that's great. I often wonder what it would be like if I had little kids right now. Would I be getting them into meditation as as a parent? I probably would, in some way. So that's an excellent way to do it. How do we express or feel gratitude without feeling guilty? Brittany, I wish I was able to talk with you, because I'd like to find out what you felt about feeling guilty. I'm imagining that it might be sort of a feeling like survivor's remorse or something, the fact that we're grateful for being where we are, but we feel bad for other people. And that's, in some ways it's an easy question. I think we need to understand who we are and where we are, and be just simply grateful for it. Where we are, I've learned a lot about privilege from many of you in this audience. You've taught me a lot, and made me very aware of the privilege that I carry as just who I am, as a white male, as a person you know, that has means to buy things and to do things. And so I understand that. And understanding it means you can be grateful for it and not feel as though you have anything to apologize for, which, you know, I mean, unless you're misusing that privilege in some fashion, which I hope you're not. And if you're not misusing that privilege, then, you know, you really don't have anything to feel guilty about. You can feel compassion for the people that don't have that privilege. You can find ways to deepen your meditation practice to really tap into the compassion that you have naturally as a person. And so you don't feel guilty that way, but you acknowledge and feel grateful for what it is that you do have. And sometimes it's that privilege, that ability to be grateful that enables you to do things. Compassion is all about, you know, basically empathy in action. You want to help people. It's not sympathy, whatever. It's not detached. It's actually you want to help people. And I've thought about that a lot. I mean, I've actually, with the NEMA team, we talk a lot about how we acknowledge that we are in a position of power in some manner because we, you know, are at the hub or a nucleus of a lot of different conversations in the museum field. And how do we best use that? How do we best use our convening power? How do we best use, and we have to acknowledge that we're part of the power structure. That doesn't mean that we have to support the status quo, but that means how can we best use the levers that we've got to help other people in our field and of course then beyond. So I think expressing gratitude for where you are is a great thing to do. Acknowledging your power, acknowledging your privilege, that's all great stuff to do, and it's not guilt unless you misuse it. Here we go. Thank you for the beautiful poem. Oh, how nice. I read the following yesterday and found it beautiful. I try to balance the pandemic fears with positive news as well. That's very nice. Thanks for saying that. The meaning of life, another comment here, is to find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. Yeah, absolutely. And that's Pablo Picasso. Huh. Good old Pablo. It's going to come up with some sort of a snarky comment, but this is mindfulness. So
and don't do that. We do have some stuff in the chat if you want to look at the chat too. So there's some interesting comments there too.
And here's a question. How have you personally been balancing your work from home life? Do you give yourself more grace throughout the day to do things like meditate and so forth? Well, all right. So the first thing is prior to joining NEMA 10 years ago, I actually had my own business for 10 years, about 20 years, a home-based business. So I actually have been accustomed at different times of my life to actually working at home in very similar circumstances where, you know, there would be days, weeks sometimes where I'd just be locked in, wouldn't leave the house much and whatever. So, you know, it's kind of been, that has been an advantage for me. It's been a long time since I did that. And I have to say that I really do enjoy working, you know, in an office with a team of people. Heather, I hope you agree that it's a good experience. I'm waiting. Oh, all right.
Sorry, I muted myself. I was being the good person. I muted myself so you can't see me typing or anything. So yes, right. I agree.
Okay, thank you. But yeah, I mean, you know, the thing that's crazy, of course, my commute, I live up on the North Shore of Boston and our office is in Arlington, Mass, which is near, just outside of Boston on the other side, near Cambridge. So it takes me about an hour every morning. And what I found is I bought myself 2 hours a day. And so, yeah, you know, it used to be my routine, waking up at 5:30, going on a walk for an hour or so, and then coming back and I'd meditate for a half hour before doing whatever. Now I meditate for 40 minutes usually, and then, you know, a little bit on the other side as well. And so it's afforded me a little bit more time to do that. Trying to get outside as much as I can, just so that, you know, there's some activity there and so forth. But yeah, so you get a little more time. Let's see. Do I find any similarities between social work and services and museum services? Well, I don't social work and I know about social work and services vicariously, I guess, um, not directly, but yeah, I mean, I'd certainly say that the work that we do is outer directed, community directed. It's mission directed. It's how do we bring joy to people's lives? How do we transform people's lives? How do we help people? And I think that we're very much part of that same mindset is social work and so forth. The question is whether anybody else believes that we're that as well. It's funny, some of the not funny, haha, but some of the conversations I've been having this past couple of weeks with museum folks has been around advocacy, messaging. How do we, especially as Congress is potentially coming up with some economic incentives and help to museums and so forth. How do we make the case that museums are as important as social service organizations? I have to say, I mean, it's kind of a hard thing to wrap your head around when people are, hungry. They need food. They need to be clothed and sheltered and all that stuff. And how do you make the case, that museums deserve public funding as well? And I have to admit, it's difficult, because in some ways we're a step removed, but on the other hand, we certainly do provide those kinds of services in terms of education and the things that we've traditionally done is trying to transform lives. So it's very much that way. I'm not sure, unfortunately, people perceive it that way because they think of museum, they think of a rich fancy place like the Met or the MFA or whatever, with big endowments, and why would I want to put public funding into that? And that's a tough thing, but what we do as museum people very definitely feels that way. How are ways we can apply mindfulness techniques to serve our audiences during this time? Well, everything. I mean, sort of on a practical level, you can do this. You can do this for your audiences, I mean, get somebody into a space like this using your umbrella in your community. If it's somebody that's, on your staff or part of your community that does meditation or yoga or whatever, but offer it. It doesn't have to be directly, aligned with your particular mission or whatever, but this is sort of the community gathering space type of thing. There are all sorts of yoga classes online now. If your place has either had a yoga program, which many museums have, offer it online. If you don't, maybe now's the time to do it. Any way to keep your audience connected is a good thing. And this is something that people are just, they're eating up. So I think that's certainly one thing that you could do. I mean, that's literally bringing mindfulness to your audience. But I think that, the bigger thing, is just like bringing mindfulness to your day. Why are you doing the things that you're doing? Are you doing it out of fear? Are you doing it out of, it's like when you go to work, am I going to work feeling like I'm doing this because I want a paycheck, because I'm scared that I'm not going to be able to eat, those kinds of things. That's not mindfulness. That's just being fearful and anxious and so forth. And I think the same thing, especially now, is, what is the mindfulness that you can bring to this particular situation? You are much more able to deliver the best of your own personal ability, your services, your gifts, and all that when you are operating from a position of tranquility and even-mindedness and so forth, as opposed to panic. And we all are going to have our freak out moments and stuff, but the more that you can bring mindfulness to it and understand that this is going to pass at some point. It's unclear when it's going to pass, but be accepting of that. As I said at the beginning, we have to accept, here's where we are, accept that we don't know what's going to happen, accept that we don't have control. And that's tough for people to just admit we do not have control over this situation, and just sort of open your arms and say, I'm going to trust it. But when you're mindful in that kind of thing, you can help calm other people down. You can help actually provide the creativity that is necessary to bring to this moment in our history. Okay, and then a person, Maria Van. Hi, Maria. One of the toughest things as a director has been conveying to the board how intense this time has been to manage the shift to remote work and how to manage a staff in that way. Do you have any suggestions for conveying that message? Yeah. There's Finney. You know, well, I've served on many boards myself, and I have served under many boards myself in my career. And it's kind of an interesting thing. It depends on your board, and your board is, it's got, as a collective, it's got a dynamic and it's got a certain personality that's made up of all the different personalities. And like people, boards can be panicked and freak out, or they can be low key and kind of circumspect about things. And so it kind of really depends. I mean, your question here implies that the board is basically, I won't say freaking out, but at least very, they're asking a lot of questions, as they should right now. What are we going to do? What's the game plan? What are the scenarios and the like? And I think the biggest thing is, honesty and transparency, of course, is the biggest thing. Being able to present to them the different options of, here's where we are with our financial position, here are the options that are ahead of us, and so forth. But also being honest about what you don't know. And this is a problem that a lot of us have as EDs, as type A personalities generally, which is what most of the museum field is. And that is that we don't like to even flirt with the idea of failure. We don't like the idea of it. It is something that is just not in our DNA. We don't want to, again, accept the idea that, we might be failing somehow. And as a result, we don't like to address it. We don't look at it head on. We don't lean into it. We try to avoid it at all costs. And that leads us into some interesting conversations with our directors, with our public, with whoever, because we try to make things sound better than they are. I mean, think of these press conferences, that we've been seeing. Things are not good, but yet people naturally try to, avoid things that make them look as though they're a failure. I think, at this point in time, it's very important for us to be able to show vulnerability, to be able to find the courage to be good leaders by saying, I don't know. We do not know. We do not know how it's going to turn out. By saying to the board, we do not know at this point how to make a decision on this. We don't have enough information, to let them understand that, I need to be able to get through this immediate transition, this immediate crisis of taking our, shutting down and temporarily mothballing our museum, moving all of the staff to this unfamiliar territory of working from home, trying to find things for them to do if they're, say frontline staff, visitor staff, whatever. And at the same time, trying to figure out the financial capability or financial scenarios for the museum. And at the same time, trying to reinvent our relevance to our communities and try to shift our programs online digitally. It's a big thing. Honesty is a big part of that as a leader, and being able to be vulnerable, to just say, we don't know. And some people might criticize you. They're like, what? You're the leader. Why don't you know? Whatever. I mean, ultimately, you got to do what you got to do, but that takes a lot of bravery. And unless you're sitting in that seat right now as being the director of your museum, nobody's going to be able to, criticize you if you feel, as I said in the meditation, whole, complete, and enough. I'm giving it my best. Hope that helps, Maria. And then Sienna, as a current museum sciences master's student, do you have any suggestions for staying motivated about your program and in touch with museums when everything is now online? Interesting. Come to our Lunch with Nima tomorrow, a webinar that I'm doing at noon on doing your elevator speech and networking. And we had decided that I was going to be doing this, 2 months ago, Heather, or something like that, but I've updated it. This is now the work from home edition. So yeah, it's a little bit about how do we search for jobs? How do we actually network during this time period of, working interactively? How do we put our best foot forward? How do we curate our backdrops? How do we let people into our homes without, showing too much? How does that, whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I think that staying motivated is going to be a tough thing, especially for people. You're not saying whether you're actually looking for a job at this moment, with the idea of graduating. I feel so much, caring for folks that are in that position where here we are. I mean, it's unclear how we're even going to graduate. What's that going to look like? All of this work that we put into it. And now we're going to graduate, not even having a graduation, but also, this uncertainty about what's the job market going to look like and so forth. It's a tough thing, very, very tough thing. So I know we're at the end of our hour, and I'm sure there are no other open questions, but Heather, you've been looking at the chat, and I guess what I'm looking at here, yeah, we've just got, too much stuff going. If you've got, questions you want to pose to me directly, please do that. Please email me. I'm happy to get to it when I can. Dan.Yeager, Yaeger, @nemanet.org, and I'd be happy to see if I can keep you in the loop. We have another one of these planned in, 2 weeks? Heather, when is it?
On April 7th. So it will definitely be different content. I mean, the first part will probably be the same, but the second part will definitely be more Q&A with Dan and stuff like that. So I also want to share the hashtag Museum Bouquet. If you guys are on Twitter today, I will send you guys all one of those for participating today and taking a break from all of the craziness going out there right now. So lots of thanks.
Yeah, so I hope you feel a little better now than you did when you came in. I do, for sure. I feel really grateful for you being with us. I really am. So have a great day, everybody. Hopefully we'll see each other again at another one of these sessions or some other time. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.